good afternoon. This is Mike with the Pressing Forward podcast, and today I have with me a great man, a great friend of mine, and somebody that I'm very fortunate to have in my life as he's led me um, and helped assisted me to where that I am today through um, just praying with me and guiding me down, the road to being a part of this awesome organization called the White Heart Foundation. And that would be Jed Morgan. He's a United States Marine and like I said, great friend of mine, and he's here with me today.
Oh,
Jed, how
thanks for
you
having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, dude. I mean, I know we tried doing this a little earlier, but obviously family and kids getting sick, and you got sick, and you've been traveling. You're always doing something, so I'm glad that you're able to have the time to sit down with me today. You've got a really amazing story, not just in your time, in service as a Marine, but what you're doing today is huge, and I think people need to hear about what you're up to. So, um. How's the weather out in Oregon? You guys, because in here in Illinois, I feel like this is probably what you guys get every single day. It's just cloudy and rainy.
Oh, it's been really weird lately. Um, some warm weather, and then the next day it's snowing and raining, and all the seasons in a day almost.
Yeah, it's quite wild how that will happen. I'm ready for springtime and summertime, that's for sure.
Yeah, same here.
So Jed, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and what life was like growing up.
Yeah. Let's see. I was moved around quite a bit actually. My parents weren't in the military or anything, but they were missionaries for a little while. The early years of my life. So I was born in California. Lived there, I think maybe a year or so, and then we moved down to Guatemala, and my parents were missionaries there for a couple of years. My brother was born there, and then I don't really remember much of it, but we ended up moving to Florida um, to go and take care of my grandmother on my dad's side who had Alzheimer's, and wanted to be able to care for her and that kind of thing. So we ended up living there for about 10 years, and just went through, elementary, middle school around that time. And then right before high school, we ended up moving to Colorado. My parents just got tired of the heat and humidity in Florida, and decided to make a new change, and felt God calling them to Colorado. So ended up moving there. Went to high school in Colorado Springs, and um, that's kind of where my initial interest in the military, and then especially the Marine Corps, kind of started growing.
Okay.
Always kind of had a
Is that because the fact that Colorado Springs is a very military heavy town?
probably in my high school, the Marine Corps, the recruiters would come in and set up a table, and play the videos, and have posters of the guys in the awesome uniforms and stuff. So it's like, obviously you see that, and as a young dude, you're like, that looks pretty sweet. Jump out of helicopters and
Yeah.
sneaking through the water, and looks pretty cool. So you know
They've got to capture those sweet moments where you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool," but little do people know that that's probably like 0.0001% of the time spent.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
um
what was it like when you're growing up and you're making these transitions to different schools? I mean, you started off, didn't really, obviously California and Guatemala, you're probably a young age, but going from growing up in Florida and spending a lot of your time there, I'm sure you developed a base group of friends, and then being tossed into an environment where you're moving to Colorado just before you start high school. How was that transition for you? Was that difficult to do?
Yeah, the one from Florida to Colorado was really hard on me. Had a bunch of friends. I was homeschooled, but we had a huge homeschool community where we were at, through my church, and so I mean, we hung out with this group of friends pretty much every week. And there was a couple of friends, right down the street, I'd ride my bike to every day. And in that time, back in the '90s, it was like, yeah, go ride your bike, do whatever, as long as you come home by dinner, that kind of childhood. And so it was awesome. And just growing up with friends that are close proximity, and then moved to Colorado and not knowing a single person there. having to basically start all over right in the high school age. So that was pretty tough going to a public from homeschool to public school in a place that I had, no friends, didn't know anybody. That was pretty difficult for me.
Now, was that hard for you then to, I guess, kind of find a group of friends or like a tribe, like were you involved in sports?
No, no, never really got interested in sports. But made a few friends here and there at school. But more so just once we found a church, got kind of connected into the youth group and everything there. And that's actually made friends through my brother, a little bit younger than I am. We ended up becoming like super close friends with these guys that he had met in his class. So kind of worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's good. At least you're able to eventually gather that group of people that you can keep close and rely on. I think that's essential in a young man's life. Going and navigating through it on your own is a little difficult, but if you have a group of friends to either help get you out of or get you into some shenanigans, I think that's a key point in every young man's life. Having that group of people that you grow up with.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So the Marine Corps recruiter comes clickety clacking in his dress blues into the high school, sweet posters up of the dude coming out of the water with like his M4 and his freaking underwater, his goggles on and everything. What was it that made you go towards the Marine Corps instead of somebody else?
um, I mean, to be honest, I actually went and did the ASVAB with the Army first. Um, don't really know why I went that route. I think just ended up talking to one of the Army recruiters, and he told me what it would look like, that kind of thing, and like, all right, that sounds pretty cool. And so ended up doing the ASVAB through the Army, and then the more I thought about it and prayed about it, because it's not something I was just going to jump into. I graduated from high school and went and worked for about a year. And just the more I thought about what do I really want to do, and I'd always had this desire for protecting people, caring for others, um, just being there for other people, really. And as I thought about going in the military or law enforcement or whatever it might be, I really wanted to do something that would challenge me the most, as well as give me confidence that I sorely lacked at that time in my life. And the Marine Corps just kind of displayed that what I was looking for. And so I went and talked to Marine recruiter and told him what I wanted to do. And I was actually going to go in as an MP. I had no idea like what the job really entailed, so that's what I initially I signed up to do. And I remember working one day at the job I was at, and I got a call from the recruiter, and he's like, "Hey, I know you're going to boot camp and everything. If you want to go through as an MP, that's going to be a few months from now, but if you want, there's an opening in a couple of weeks if you want to go infantry." And so I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. And, and so that's why I ended up doing infantry, and I wanted to go to boot camp a little earlier and things like that. So it's
Okay,
kind
so
of interesting how things worked out.
yeah, you don't hear that often that usually it's a pretty difficult thing to get an infantry slot that like fills up pretty quickly, and I don't think many guys get that opportunity to have the recruiter like come in and say, well, there's an open infantry spot. You could take that if you want to go a little bit sooner. Um but yeah, that would have been interesting to see how things would have played out if you would have gone and been an MP, like completely different play out of things. Do you ever think sometimes of, like if you would have waited or should you have waited? Does that ever cross your mind?
No, I mean, just with everything that's happened, in my time in service and then afterwards, like it's so evident God orchestrated everything so perfectly. In the moment, you can't see it, but looking back, 10, 15 years later, you're like, oh man, like God orchestrated everything so perfectly that I wouldn't be where I am right now doing what I'm able to do with White Heart if it wasn't for what happened way
Right,
back then.
right.
So,
That's true. And you got a very I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if humble or, humble is the way to look at that, but like a very open-minded, because, I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's probably a few different emotions that come into play with the way things had turned out for you.
mm,
Um, so you join the Marine Corps Infantry. You go to basic training. What year is this? Actually, you were in my boot camp class, I'm pretty sure, right? India Company 3214. Is that
yeah,
what yeah. Um, and then we
2009.
Yep,
Yeah.
2009. And then
Mm.
uh we weren't in the same platoon, but we were different platoons. What was that like for you going to boot camp? I mean, being homeschooled, you kind of got a bigger immersion into, I don't want to say like, a more chaotic environment when you're going to public school now, right? And then now you're after 4 years there, you're jumping and completely going out the deep end into the Marine Corps infantry or well, the Marine Corps boot camp. So what was that like for
Mm.
you?
Yeah, thankfully I had, before I got to boot camp, had the delayed entry. I was in the delayed entry program for a few months, and so um, we had the opportunity to go and train with the recruiters up at the Air Force Academy. So high elevation training, doing PT a couple times a week with them got me pretty well prepared for the physical aspect of boot camp. It was more like the mental, emotional side of things. Like you're talking about, going from emotionally homeschooled upbringing to I mean, thrown right into chaos, really. People yelling and screaming in your face and all that. And, definitely not anything I was used to growing up. So um, and then being away from family. Like I had never had an opportunity where I was away from family for that extended period of time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was the hardest part for me, was just that, you know, that separation from everything that I knew and people that I loved, um, and limited contact to them. But as far as the physical aspect, it wasn't too bad. But I think the biggest takeaway was the confidence that I was looking for. It definitely gave me confidence that I was definitely lacking. Graduating high school and everything, and I was a pretty uh, just lone, closed off, quiet, head hanging down kind of guy. Just kind of kept to myself. But Marine Corps definitely, boot camp definitely helped open me up a little bit more and gave
Yeah.
me some confidence.
Do you think that that's something that your family saw from you immediately upon you graduating from boot camp?
Yeah, definitely. That was the thing they mentioned the most.
That's good. I think that
Yeah.
it's important for young men to find, like, I was talking about this with somebody on a previous podcast, and like a lot of young men nowadays don't have this right, or boys don't have a rite of passage into
Mm-hmm.
essentially becoming a man. It's like, oh, 18 or 21, like you can buy tobacco or you can buy beer, like that's really like after that, there's no, I don't want to say indoctrination, but like a journey of trial and tribulation to get you to a point where you've established yourself as not being a boy anymore. And I think when everybody goes to, military boot camp in general, but specifically the Marine Corps, I think anybody can attest to the fact that the Marine Corps is pretty hardcore in terms of the turnout that they get, what type of individual you are afterwards. And it's definitely that rite of passage that many are looking for into one, you built that confidence that you look for, your head hanging high, or, head held high, chest out, and you got that 36-inch step, nice and perfect, high sleeves rolled on your camis. You're looking
Yeah.
fresh, dude. You're on top of the world. Were you dating Anna at this point in time? Did you guys had
No, not yet.
not yet? Okay, so that comes a little
Mm-hmm.
later.
Mm-hmm.
So you get done with boot camp. It seems like, that definitely opened your mind up a little bit and your um I don't want to say insecurities, but that introvertness that you had and
Mm-hmm.
so um what then was it like once you went to infantry training? How'd that go?
Yeah, that was I definitely had fun with infantry school. A lot of guys, or not a lot, but a few of the guys that I went to boot camp with were in the same platoon in SOI.
Yep,
And so that was kind of cool being able to know some of the guys in there, and then gained a few other friends in the unit as well. Guys that live fairly locally, and so I'd on the weekends go and hang out with their family and whatnot. So it was pretty cool to be able to have the kind of the family away from home, right there, and
definitely.
yeah, I just enjoyed kind of the more in-depth training that was more specific to what we would actually be doing, as opposed to boot camp being just more of a all-encompassing training,
Yeah, just to break you down and mold you and get you, able to pay attention to detail and attention to orders and that basic building blocks to like some responsibility and schedule and meeting timeline requirements and all that stuff. And then once you get to infantry training, they sharpen that spear a little bit, so now you're a little more lethal in the sense of understanding some of the basic things that come with small unit tactics and employing weapon systems. So, what is there something that stands out for you as a moment in time during ITB where it really clicked for you that you enjoyed doing this?
mm, yeah, I can't think of like a specific moment. Um, yeah, a lot of the time there is a little fuzzy, but yeah, I'm trying to think on.
Or just an impactful moment that you saw from, I don't know, some of the instructors or something that made them show you, like you started to learn things or see them display something and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I don't know if it's a course of fire or setting up a machine gun and employing it or the mental toughness and endurance it takes to get through a 20-kilometer hike with all the weight on you, and something like that.
Mm. Yeah, I remember one of the ranges we did. Um, the instructor, one of the instructors on the range, um, we were, I think we were hiding behind some cover, at this range we were doing, and just kind of having to hold there for a minute while other people were moving, and had the instructor. He was just kind of chatting with us for a little bit, and found out he was in an infantry unit before he came as an instructor, and he was just kind of chatting with us about his time in the infantry and what that kind of looked like, and kind of opened up my eyes a little bit more to like, okay, this isn't just some training that we're going to be doing. This is a reality, especially in the time that we're in Iraq, Afghanistan, um, of doing the things that he's talking about. Witnessing the things that he's talking about, and I think that kind of impacted me a little bit on more of the realities of what we are training for and why it's important.
Yeah. That's a good way to like take in that information because a lot of guys don't understand what they're getting into until they really get into it. And in the sense of like, oh yeah, this is training like sweet. I'm learning how to insert a magazine in my rifle and like shoot some rounds and get to shoot like a saw and a 240. Um, but then, all those basic skills come into play when you get to your unit and now you're learning to, do it on a larger scale and implement like, alternate units and air and freaking tanks or whatever. It's all plays a relative role into what the next step is. So I like the fact that leadership in those positions because we had some pretty good instructors at ITB. I'm pretty sure they were all um, like 2-4 guys that were like in Ramadi, like they were in Ramadi in like 2004, 2006, and them being able to utilize those moments that they went through to like let you know that this is serious, this is real. Like there's
Yeah.
guys that get killed, that get shot, that get blown up, and like this isn't just a game. And it's good. I think that the Marines in that position, or soldiers or whatever, if you're in that um, phase where you're going on to the next level, it's good to get that insight and have people let you know that this is reality now.
Hmm.
But it seems like you excelled in ITB. I know that I'm almost positive. Bedinker told me because Bedinker was in my like I know he was there, but there's so many kids or so many young men. I'm pretty sure we were in ITB together as well because everybody either went to 1-7, 2-3, or third LAR that we were
Hmm.
in ITB with. But um, yeah, I don't know. It was a long time ago and a lot of people in there. And I don't even have a book. Like I don't know where the ITB picture is, like the big freaking
Yeah,
uh,
I'll have to see if I can find it somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
But
cool.
did you know that you were going to 1-7 before the day that we graduated, or did they tell you you're going to 29 Palms? 29 Palms, how'd that work for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think it was before we graduated. They had the piece of paper with our names on it and what unit we were going to, and I like looked at it and I was like, 29 pounds, where the heck's that? You
Yeah.
know?
He sounds luxurious, dude. At
Yeah,
first you're
decent,
like,
man.
this is gonna be nice.
Yep. And then some of the other guys are like, oh no, dude, you're going out in the middle of nowhere. And
Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny. It's funny how that works. The Marine Corps puts you where they need you, not where you want to go. Because they even, I wonder if it's like a mental thing that they do to like, I don't know, like they ask you like, what's your wish list or whatever, and you get to pick like three places, whether you want to go to, Pendleton or Lejeune, or I don't think anybody knew what 29 Palms was because I said the same thing. I was like, what the hell is 29 Palms? I don't know what that is. Um, I don't know. But how was that then, that bus ride there? They gather you guys up. They say you guys are going to 1st Battalion, 7th Marines and 29 Palms. What's going through your head at this point?
Mm, yeah, I mean, total, change in scenery, in just the way that we're going to train. I mean, you start going out towards there. I mean, just dirt and yucca trees and rock. So, I'm coming from Pendleton, lush woods and hills and trails and water. And so it's like, all right, we're definitely it's going to be some different training, but at the same time, it's like kind of perfect place to train for where we're going.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, I would just kind of like, well, let's see what the base looks like, and then you get on base, and you're like, well, it's not a whole lot
Yeah.
here, and
Lake Bandini, man.
Lake
Yeah,
Vandini
there you
smells
go.
delicious, and
Yep. What was your receiving like your senior wise? You guys get off the bus. Did you have somebody that kind of meet and greet with a smile on their face and then brought you into the ambush that was the barracks?
no, we got there, and from what I can remember, they had, I think they just had us standing outside the CO's office, and had attention or whatever, and stand there for a while. I can't. I think it was like our gunny or something. He came out and just kind of like looked us over and talking to us about the unit and that kind of thing and what we'd be expecting, and did the whole processing there. And then we just, our seniors were guys that just came back from an Iraq deployment, and most of them were just waiting to get out. They had just a few months left before they were going to be leaving the Marine Corps, and so it was a great time to be a boot. These guys fresh from the sandbox uh, and ready to get out, and they have no care in the world about who you
Anything?
are
Yeah,
and anything. Um, so yeah, it was a pretty fun time going through, going in the barracks and as a
yeah.
boot. And
Well, you get thrown into Baker Company, right? That's you go
yeah,
into Baker. That's yep. That good old who was I just talking with not too long ago? Oh yeah, Doc Bennett. Did you know Matt Bennett?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I know him.
yeah, Bennett, and I was supposed to go visit Bedinker. I still keep up with Hamilton. I'm gonna go visit Chiefy. Get out of here, buddy. I'm gonna go meet up with Hamilton. I'm gonna go visit him in Florida, and
Nice.
do an interview with Hamilton. So it's good. I keep in touch with a few of the guys that I knew prior, and then obviously from meeting you, some of the guys that I've met from you.
Mhm.
But what was that like knowing that you're going to 1-7 Baker Company and the pretty solid lineage of Marine Corps history that comes from Baker Company?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't really know a whole lot about the lineage until getting there, and then being told to read certain books and that kind of, and then starting to finally realize like, oh wow, like okay, like there's a lot of history in this unit, and really important stuff that happened with them. So that's pretty cool. But
Yeah, I think so, and like me coming from light armored reconnaissance that was not the I think they were stood up around the late 80s, early 90s. I know Desert Storm is the first thing that they really participated in, and it kind of sucks because you talk to all these guys from these Marine Corps units that have been fighting since the First World War, if not prior,
mm,
and they have like this lineage of the legacy that follows the footsteps that they have to fill. It's pretty amazing to hear some of the stories of sacrifice and courage that come from those previous battles.
yeah.
Once you started to get into reading some of this stuff and learning the knowledge about these previous Marines that served in the same unit that you're now in, did that give you any sort of motivation to like press yourself more, or, like carry on with the legacy that you're now following in?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess the hard part being, like with the seniors that I end up having, um, the unfortunate part of it is, with the attitude that they had, and they kind of put on us as they're training us this attitude of just not caring. They really kind of unfortunately put a bad taste in my mouth and a bad image of what a Marine should be like. Them constantly showing this that oh, I don't care. I'm just going to be belligerent. I'm going to talk back to my seniors. I'm going to talk back to those in authority. I'm going to badmouth them behind their back. That kind of stuff really, you're hearing it constantly every day, starts kind of in your mind like, oh, is this how I'm supposed to be acting? Is this how I'm supposed to be feeling? And so, whether it's an excuse or not, it kind of played a role in how I started feeling, at least early on. Going into our first deployment, which is a MEU and whatnot, just kind of like this, you know, unmotivated feeling towards really wanting to try super hard and try to better myself as much as I could have. Um, but yeah, I mean, reading the books and whatnot definitely makes you think about, okay, like these guys, they did so much. I mean, they went above and beyond what they're asked to do, and I better be able to push myself if that opportunity presents itself. I hope that I would be able to present myself in the capacity similar to them. Um, but yeah, kind of just the way it kind of played out with people that are in authority over me at that point kind of did unfortunately play a role in how I
Started
kind
to
of went through
perceive
my
things. Yeah,
yeah yeah
that's unfortunate because I can relate to the same thing with not that I wasn't like I was very uh good at retaining knowledge and wanting to learn more, but the some of like the my team leaders and like the senior lance corporals, some of the other guys, like they had this different mindset where it was, obviously we like partied and drank beer and we're, doing all kinds of ridiculous stuff, but that same sense of disrespect to authority and thinking, like very I mean, it's the infantry, dude. There's a lot of testosterone. There's a lot of ego there. A lot of alpha male chest beating kind of dudes. So it's easy in an environment like that um, I don't know, get pulled into the wrong crowd because you think that they're cool or because that, like this is what you want to be like. And I wish I would have taken a better approach at some aspects of my time in service because I started to become that as I went down further in my Marine Corps career as or my time in my 5 years in. And looking back at it, it definitely puts a negative taste in the mouth of your junior Marines to see their leader, like somebody that they would like look up to in a sense, like acting like a shitbag or not caring and giving up and being like, "Fuck this, I'm done." So it's that's something good to hit on because if you're listening and you're a small unit leader and you're a guy that's got one enlistment in and you can do a lot of good still, regardless of the situation that you're in. And it's, like I'm not deploying to combat or we're doing this BS training. If you take advantage of it while you're in and you make the most of it, like you can have a large impact on the way that things turn out within your squad, within your platoon, and obviously your own life as well. But yeah, you go on a MEU, you go on the dirty worst, or what do you do?
Yeah, yeah, 31st. Um, yeah, out to from Japan and hopped on a ship and went to Philippines, Singapore, a couple other parts of Japan. So kind of uneventful. Nothing really happened, but just kind of training for the boat company. Um, you know, did some training for you know beach raids and that kind of thing.
Is there, I mean, did you enjoy some of the stuff that you guys were doing, or was it kind of like, man, this you're not kind of going through the motions, you're like, oh, whatever, let's just get this done and over with.
I mean, it was a there were some fun parts to it for sure. Uh, going and sitting on the rubber rafts and training to go and assault a beach is pretty cool, and especially the history involved with 1-7 and stuff on, um, with Guadalcanal and things like that, where um, it's kind of that history of assaulting beaches, and being able to train to do that exact thing. So that's pretty cool. And then being able to travel a little bit, getting out of the country, seeing different parts of the world, um, being able to kind of help train Filipino Marines. Those kinds of things were really an awesome part of the whole deployment.
Yeah, it's a good. A lot of guys will get upset that they have to go on a MEU. I didn't, but I did go on a UDP, so I was in like Okinawa and also mainland Japan. But initially, I was like kind of bummed about it because I was just like, send me back to Afghanistan. I'm not wanting to go on a MEU or a UDP. But I think that there's a lot of experience that comes from that in the sense of being able to travel and see a different culture and do something outside the training and deployment schedule that you have. Um, and you meet some new people, go to some new places,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a part of the world that a lot of people will never get to go to. And it seems like you got to jump around to a few different places. And with experience like that, even when you're not testing yourself in combat as that first deployment, there's leadership traits that you pick up along the way and things that you see that you do and don't like, or a different way to handle a situation, or I guess utilize your training to be more effective as a Marine, a rifleman, as a machine gunner, whatever it is. Because you were just an 11, right? You were an 0311. Yep.
Yep.
So, um, but did you set yourself up for a position of leadership as you were ending that deployment and getting ready to come home? Were you proving yourself to your senior Marines and your leadership that you were able to take on these tasks and responsibilities?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, coming out of that deployment, and especially transitioning into knowing that we're going to go and over to Afghanistan for our next deployment. I was able to start really trying to push myself to fill more of a leadership role. Um, so I picked up um, just a team leader position around the time that we started doing our training for Afghanistan.
Okay, and for you, what is this workup like? Because at this point now, you're dating Anna, right? Or have you guys gotten married at this point?
Yeah, so we started dating, uh, man, just I think maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month after um, I got to 1-7.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, got out of SOI, went to 1-7, a few weeks to maybe a month later, where that's when we started dating. So yeah, we went through the whole first deployment, the MEU, dating, and then yeah, we're kind of getting closer to where, we're going to get engaged um, prior to deployment, and then actually getting married too before deployment. But yeah, the workup was man, I mean, obviously there's parts of it that I absolutely hated, but um,
What's one of the most, if you think back to it, what's the one thing that you're like, that was probably the worst part about it?
um, I think it was just some of the ranges that we had to do out in 29 Palms, where you're just a couple, like one of them at least, I was just kind of sitting on on the fob out there, out in the middle of nowhere, doing pretty much nothing, just sitting around. They didn't have anything for us to do, or they, screwed up with whatever they had planned for us, and
Right.
word didn't get passed properly, whatever it was, I can't remember, but just pretty much sitting on a fob for almost a week or something, and just eating MREs and you know
And then you're
sleeping
like,
on the ground.
what is the point of this? I guess in a way that kind of, um, not that you'd be stagnant for a week like that on deployment. I don't know. I definitely never was, but some of those times where you're on like the patrol base or something, or when you're getting to Manas, or you get into like Leatherneck or Dwyer, and you're like waiting for the transition to happen, and there's a lot of sitting around doing nothing, in the heat or in the cold temperatures. So I think, you know, inadvertently it's a good way to get used to something, in the terms of hurry up and waiting, or prepping to do a mission or whatever it is, learning how to be patient and wait for the orders to come down from command. But uh
Yeah, totally.
what is something that solidified you in your squad, right? Or an event that you guys did, like, whether it be range 400, or I don't know, like a barracks party, or something that you guys did together that solidified, like, because what, you guys were a third squad, or third platoon, second squad, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So Baker 3-2. That squad right there, how did you guys, like I said, come together and solidify your relationship as like that tight-knit unit?
That's a good question. I mean, um, so let's see, a little bit, a few months after getting back from our MU, we ended up having a boot drop, and so people like Hamilton, I think Bennett, he wasn't a boot, but he came with that drop. So we had a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of new guys, and some older guys from other units coming in at this time, and so there was a lot of moving around. So I ended up being, moved from one squad over to another, going from a rifleman to a saw gunner, that kind of thing. So ended up moving us around quite a bit. Thankfully, I was pretty decent friends with most of the guys in Baker Company. Not really a whole lot of guys couldn't get along with, but so that helped. But with the moving around, it took a little while, especially with once we had our boots and everything, getting them all prepped and trained up and kind of used to what life was going to be like, and then starting to do some of the ranges all together. I think that all the different ranges really kind of solidified for us, how we could work together. How to work through some things with some of the newer guys on just being able to work together, and unit cohesiveness and things like that. But once we started doing more and more ranges together, being able to have that trust, knowing that they're going to have my back and I'm going to have their back, kind of thing. That really helped solidify that for us. I think one of the larger ranges, I don't remember any of the numbers for them, but it was a few day event that we did, and we had had nighttime ranges and things like that we were doing, and they had helicopters raining down fire at night, and that kind of stuff, and being able to work together, having fake casualties and things like that, fake IEDs going off, and being able to train as close to as we could for Afghanistan, and realizing, like, I mean, we either got to work together or a lot of people are going to die, kind of thing. That's probably the biggest one that we really started realizing, like, all right, like we're a family. We're not you know, just some guys that we know. Like we're a family. I'm willing to die for you. He's willing to die for me. That kind of thing. And so it's pretty cool to see. We all, even though these guys were like, I mean, just a few months out of boot camp and SOI, um, we became pretty close friends really fast.
Yeah, and you spend like every single day of your lives together, unless it's the weekend, and it sounds like you guys didn't have much excuse me, Liberty time, because it seems like those guys got thrown right into the grinder, in the sense of like into that op tempo of getting ready for a training to get ready for a deployment. So it comes around. Do you guys know that you're going to Sangin? Like, is that something that like they're told you we're going to Sangin, Afghanistan, or was that not until towards the time to get ready to leave that you found out you're going there?
Yeah, a little closer to when we left. And they gave us maybe a couple of months notice of where we're going, so we were able to kind of do some research and find out where we're going to be going.
So when you did some research to find out where you're going, what'd you come up with?
Um, it was at the time anyway. I think it probably still is, but it was one of the hotter areas in Afghanistan for Taliban activity.
Yep.
Um, so definitely a hot box for IEDs, especially. So watched a few videos. Our unit watched a few videos of other units that had been there, Brits and things like that. So actual footage from units that were had been insane, and just seeing the immense amount of IED threat they were constantly dealing with.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty heavy. One to watch it on video, but then you're not too far away from living that reality yourself, just being there in that environment and getting outside the wire and playing with the Taliban. So you go on post-deployment leave. Obviously you do Mojave Viper, and most everybody knows what Mojave Viper is, but if you don't, it's a 30-day exercise that basically is like a qualifying factor for the unit to be at a ready to deploy. It's an evaluation to see what the competency level is of your unit before you're going and on that combat deployment. So obviously you guys were deemed ready to go. You go on post deployment leave or pre-deployment leave. Is that when you and Anna decide to get married?
Yeah, yeah, I think maybe even a little bit before then. Can't remember. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it must have been pre-deployment leave. Yeah, we got engaged a few months prior, and then we were talking about waiting, but I think again, just another thing that God kind of orchestrated and put on our hearts, like, no, we should get married before. And so we ended up getting married on pre-deployment leave. And actually, no, not couldn't have been pre-deployment. It was a little bit earlier than that, because she ended up actually moving to 29 Palms for a couple of months. So it was a little bit before our pre-deployment leave
Okay.
that we ended up getting married. Yeah.
So she's out in 29 Palms. You guys do your thing in terms of getting ready to go on deployment. Do you remember when it is exactly that you guys pack up and you're headed out?
Um, let's see, it would have been March of 2012. Can't remember the exact date, but
Yeah. So March of
yeah.
2012, you guys take your trip, and through the different stops along the way, you find your way
Mhm.
to Afghanistan. Are there any notable mentions along the way in the trip to getting there? Or is it pretty straightforward on probably everybody else's experience?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, on the way there.
Okay.
But
So you guys get into Afghanistan. What what are you thinking now? You're like this guy coming in. This is your first combat deployment and you're touching down in Afghanistan. What's going through your head?
I mean, honestly, when we first got there, we um, land near Sangin. They load us up on some 7 tons or whatnot, and we're driving through, and driving through there, the city of, I guess, the downtown area, if you want to call it, of Sangin. Um, and honestly, the feeling of like, are we just in 29 Palms?
Dude,
Just like,
it's so funny that you say that. I swear that that is exactly what I thought as soon as we stepped off the helo. I'm like, is this like the backyard? Are they playing some kind of joke on us? Did they just like fly us in circles for, like 18 hours and you know,
yeah,
it's crazy. Seriously thought the same thing.
yeah. I mean, really, reality of being in a war zone didn't hit for a little while, because I mean, we're not getting shot at immediately, driving through this town or whatever. So, it just feels like another one of the, like, training event in 29 Palms. And so you're not quite on guard yet, for what is about to come, until those first rounds start popping off, and then it's like, oh, okay, this isn't just practice anymore.
How
So,
how long did that take before that started to happen?
just a couple of weeks, I think. So we got there, still kind of the tail end of winter. So they haven't started harvesting anything yet. Taliban's not really moving too heavily when we first get there. So we're, swapping out with the unit that was there, and they're taking us on some patrols, out of the patrol base that we were at,
Do you remember the names
showing
of
us
any
the
of these
area.
places? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you remember any of the names of the patrol bases that you guys were like jumping around to or starting off at?
Yeah, we were my um, squad was in Full, and then the main unit, main 17, was at Inkerman.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's where like the battalion was sitting at. But yeah, we stayed at Full until we shut that place down. But yeah, so we just go and do the patrols with the previous unit, kind of showing us the lay of the land. So we had, like, for those familiar of the area, you got the main highway there, and on one side you got the green zone, with all the fields and farms and whatnot, and then on the other side called the brown zone, because it's just brown, and it's all the people's homes, and dirt huts and walls and whatnot, compounds. So our unit was tasked with patrolling the brown zone, so going through the alleyways and the homes, and figuring out who's any good, who's got some intel, who's willing to help out, who to stay away from, what areas to kind of stay away from, that kind of thing.
So initially, you guys are out there kind of conducting census patrols in the sense of figuring out the landscape of the population, who's who and who's involved with what. Um,
Yeah.
are there things that start to um, make you guys realize that the shift in the season is the shift in the I guess the tempo of the Taliban?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell. I mean, as it starts getting warmer, as the farmers start harvesting that poppy, um, there's a very definite uptick in activity. So, I mean, you go from, potentially seeing an IED on patrol to you're definitely going to see at least one on every patrol. Um, and then, getting the pop shots, getting the grenades thrown over the walls and that kind of thing. That starts just picking up more and more as the warmer weather hits, and the harvests are coming through.
Okay. And now how does that shift in the enemy's op tempo make the change in what your unit is doing to counter that?
Um, I mean, I think, the main thing we made sure to do was just never patrolling the same areas or in the same directions, all the times. We're constantly changing routes, um, basic things, figuring out, how we can do, um, splitting up the units to cover different areas to kind of throw the enemy off, those sorts of things, and then how to incorporate Afghan army and Afghan police into our patrols and utilize them as well.
Yeah, that is a difficult task. I'll tell you what. I mean, with my first deployment, it was a different environment where we didn't incorporate A&A as much. But the second deployment, because we were there same time, second deployment in 2012, just obviously in a different AO, and it was that heavy mindset of like utilizing the Afghans way more. Every patrol they had to be involved on. We had way more partnered positions than we had ever had before. So every patrol base was Afghan and Marine. I mean the main like the cops and the fobs. At the larger places there was a separate compound that the Afghans had, but most all the small places it was dual living quarters, and you got like a mud hut wall dividing, like a compound wall dividing Afghans and Marines. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy to see how for me at least, in what we were doing, how long it had taken from the time of being there since 2001, to now we're like 2010, 2011, 2012, and we're just now starting to have this heavier mindset of incorporating the Afghans into doing their job, like not us doing it for them, and to see how lackadaisical they are when it comes to it and how like unmotivated they are. Like there's some good ones, but for the most part, everyone wants to smoke hash or opium and sit back and, hashish
Yeah.
double good. Hashish Taliban no good, hashish double good. Um, but what, um, you know, you guys are there, you see the shift, the season starts changing, op tempo picks up, one, two patrols a day, you guys getting in multiple firefights or at least getting engaged every time you step outside the wire. What's that kind of like?
Yeah, I mean we're patrolling probably at least once a day, and then holding holding security on the PB, at night. Have another unit go out. So yeah, there's probably a couple patrols a day that we're running, and yeah, I mean for the most part where we were at, they never really stood ground and gave us any opportunity for an actual like firefight. Most of the time they just punch a hole through a wall, spray a few rounds, and run. So we'd have, there'd be no way to really find them. But we're always at least getting something. So walking through an alleyway, they might spray some rounds, trying to hit one of us as we're crossing. But for the most part, it was just the IED threat. Walking through. I mean, you're going super slow, just knowing that there's an IED somewhere close by, and having to sit on an IED almost every patrol, waiting for EOD guys to come and take care of it. But
Yeah, that's one of the shittier waiting games to be honest with you, because there's just no way. We've before marked and moved on. Like we've had to mark IEDs and just
oh yeah,
continue on through the patrol. But when it comes to the risk versus reward in the sense of should we take care of this if you guys aren't getting directly engaged and you've got the ability to hold up on it. I mean, I think everybody can agree to the fact that it's better to go ahead and blow that in place or, disarm that and reduce it in whatever way you can, so somebody doesn't find it the wrong way. Now you get into, a couple months of the deployment. Um, Obviously there's an event that takes place that changes your life forever.
mm,
Do you want to get into that?
sure, yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, so we were conducting a normal foot patrol. Um, did had a prayer circle we started doing before every patrol. Did that. We were at from what I can remember, we were at the Afghan police station. Um, I think we spent the night there. Got up, did our prayers, and headed out the wire. and we're patrolling up to an area that, a couple months prior um, we had patrolled, and this was when we still had full on up. We closed that down, and at the time, at this point, we were kind of stationed in Inkerman with the rest of the battalion. So it's been a few months since we patrolled this particular area, and so we decided to go up there again. So we're walking up, and there's this hill, not a huge hill, but a slight hill, um, and it overlooked a valley on the other side with a roadway, and the Taliban would sneak through and use that roadway a lot of times for bringing weapons in, taking drugs and stuff out, that kind of thing. And so, we've been patrolling for a few hours. We decided, hey, let's go up here. We'll do some, recon on the hill here and just kind of see if we can see any movement down this valley. So we get up there, got the sweeper out front, doing his thing, doesn't pick anything up. And so we're all, getting in a circle, laying behind our rifles, um, looking through our scopes down the hill. And as a saw gunner, I'm, trying to look for what's the best area for me to be in case we get engaged. So I lay in one spot. I think it's pretty decent, but then I get told I need to, get moved to a different area. Like, all right, Roger. I pick up, move over. I set my rifle down in front of me, and then I get into position behind it, and then either my foot or my knee, when I set it down, is when everything just kind of went black for a few seconds, and kind of having that feeling of, when you're in a dream and you want to move, but your body won't move. If you ever had that kind of feeling, that's what it felt like when I woke up. And I thought I was dreaming at first. Everything's all fuzzy. Ears are just shot. Can't really hear anything. And then just that feeling of numbness. Like I want to move my body, but I can't. And then my eyes kind of start adjusting and working a little bit more. And I see dust falling, buddies coming running over to me through the dust, and just putting their knees right on my, slamming it right in my legs and putting tourniquets on. And then that's when I was like, oh, I'm not dreaming at all. I just hit an IED. And so yeah, I was able to lift my head up enough and see what the damage was. And my right leg was just shredded. My left leg was gone. And I didn't even know about my arm, being all shredded open and stuff. I didn't feel any of that. Just kind of in shock at the moment, not really a whole lot of pain. But yeah, so they got me all tourniqueted up there, put me on a stretcher and walked me down the hill. And there was an abandoned poppy field at the base of this hill. They walked me down there, and that's when this pain started happening. And I had my buddy Hamilton at my head, carrying the stretcher, and he just started saying the Lord's Prayer and walking down the hill with me, trying to keep me awake. They set me down, and then guys started trying to wash the blood out of my eyes. Something had taken ripped my nose and stuff open, and lip and everything. They're trying to pour blood out of my eyes, and just kind of like, dude, you're gonna be okay. And definitely an emotional moment for them. But whether it was just the shock or whatnot, I wasn't super scared or anything in that moment. I just kind of knew, like, I just told them, God's got a plan for whatever's going to happen. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. God's going to use it for whatever he wants. And, thankfully the helicopter got there pretty early. And I think like 10 minutes or so, the helo was there, loaded me up and took me over to the field hospital at Leatherneck. Um, and then from there, yeah, I remember them. They, put me on some meds in the helicopter, but we landed. I kind of remember just kind of like, these little flashes of video, if you will, in my mind of, carrying me into the tent, and then the doctor saying like, "Hey, you're gonna be all right. We'll take care of you." And then just, lights out. And that's kind of the main story from,
Yeah.
Afghanistan part of things. Yeah.
I mean, every time I hear it, it gets that I just because I know, I wasn't there, but I know you at this point like very well. Obviously Mike Hamilton, I know him very well and the connection that you guys have with each other, and obviously the time that we all spent together on one of the White Hart trips. But I don't think many people can understand the severity of not only what you experienced, which in itself is obviously forever life-changing, but also the things that the guys that are there trying to keep you alive. That um, the work that it takes to be able to do that and sustain you for higher care. And obviously, you're still here today. So, um, thank God that they were trained well enough to be able to stabilize you or at least sustain you to get you to that next level, which, I know there's a lot of people out there that are just, so glad that you're still here. And, I'm thankful for it as well. So I appreciate you sharing that with everybody because I think that the way that you're able to explain it really sheds some light on, what's going through your mind and then how you're able to um, get yourself and the guys through a situation like that. So, you know, what what's the next step with that? When is it that you come to? Were you in a coma for a while or where'd you wake up at?
Yeah, it was they had me in induced coma for I think a couple of months, and or at least a month or so, and took me up to Germany to go and start more of the hospital care. And the doctors there, they didn't think I was going to make it, so they called my wife Anna and my parents, and they said, "Hey, your husband's not going to make it, and you need to come out here and say your last goodbyes." So my family they flew them out to Germany to go and essentially say goodbye. Um, and for whatever reason, they got there and started talking to me, even though I was in coma, and started talking to me. And I turned a corner, and the doctor's like, "Wow, I guess he's actually doing okay now. Like his vitals are going up. He's actually good enough to go and fly to Walter Reed." And so literally, parents get there, flew all the way to Germany, and I don't think they got even a night's rest, and they were on another flight with me to Walter Reed. Um, so yeah, they had me in a coma for a little while there, and then they woke me up, and I was able to start kind of I guess more of the not really rehab process yet. It was a lot of the sorry, my kids are
No, dude,
screaming.
it's okay.
You can hear them.
You know me, I got the kids too, man. So sometimes
All right.
they're rambunctious and wild. So it shows the realness of it, and it's obviously you've got three beautiful kids now. You're still married to
Yeah.
Anna, and we'll get to that. But the fact that that's another thing that I think people don't take into consideration is obviously the effect that it plays on your family. I mean, you're a freshly married man. Um, your mom and dad, obviously nobody's parents expect their kid to be the one that goes over to combat. I mean, getting either a knock at the door about somebody being killed in action, or that phone call that says that you're in bad shape. So, I mean, it just shows like the miracles that God can do. They come out there and just maybe who knows how just the do they say the people that are did you because this was what I was going to say. They say people that are in comas, they can like say that they can hear people's voices. Did you at all or anything, do you recollect a possibility of there being a time where you may have heard them talking to you while you were in a coma?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was definitely a trippy time. I remember just kind of at least feeling like I was waking up at certain points, and the room's like upside down, and then I close my eyes again, I open them, the room's right side up, and the trippy things like that. And then um the one time that kind of stands out to me the most was having this dream that I'm suspended in this glass tube, and my dad is on the outside, and there's this blue light that's kind of raising up, uh, passing up through my legs, and through my body and everything, and just a searing immense amount of pain as it's doing that, but it's like repairing my body as it's going up. And my dad, I'm just screaming in pain. My dad is on the outside, yelling like, "It's gonna be okay, son. You're gonna be all right." Whether that was like, my coma brain like piecing together my dad actually saying that to me or not, I don't know. But
Geez, that's
you know,
unbelievable. That's really
yeah.
unbelievable. Um, so you end up being transported to Walter Reed. Family goes back with you. Um, what does that oh man, I what is that first mental hurdle of, I mean, you've obviously realized this, and more than likely you're in shock when the initial sight of what happened was the day that you were injured. Um, then you come back, you're out of the coma. What is those initial mental hurdles that you're experiencing when you realize that this is, the way that the way that you are now?
I mean, I think a good thing was that I, was awake. If I was in a coma that whole time, I didn't wasn't able to pick my head up to see what had happened, be different. But because I was able to pick my head up, I was like, "Yep, they're gone." Legs are gone, and pretty much I already accepted it at that point. Waking up in the hospital, my dad had no idea that I knew, and so he's telling me, "Son, I hate to tell you this, but you lost your legs." And I was just like, "I know, Dad, I know."
Oh, Jesus.
Um, so I
Oh,
knew that they were gone. I didn't know the severity of it. And through infections and whatnot, I had originally below knee amputations on both legs, and they tried to salvage my right leg for a little bit, but with infection, just had to keep getting amputated more and more.
right.
And so ended up above knee on both legs. But I think it really, bigger issue is honestly my hand. Trying, I lost use of or most of the use of my dominant arm, my dominant hand, and so, simple things like trying to eat in the hospital, or write something. That was kind of just the frustrating part of it all, and really didn't hit too much as far as the legs go until I started being able to be more mobile and moving around. I started getting really frustrated with, how things were gonna be, having lost both legs.
Right. And, with getting that frustration, this also ties into something that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration is the effect that it has on your loved ones, the people that are there trying to support you through this. And the only reason I obviously know these things is because you and, plenty of the other guys that we know, have shared these things with me. So, um, you don't think about the way that it plays an effect into what's going on with your loved ones in the sense of what they're going through, knowing that you've been injured, right? In this whole journey of being by your side, not wondering if you're going to make it or not. And then now you're dealing with these frustrations of things aren't ever going to be the same again. And trying to grasp that while relearning, you know, everything that you were able to do with this right hand, you've got to relearn to be able to do these things with your left hand, down to eating and writing, all these basic daily tasks that you were, you know, completely capable of doing previously. And not that you're not now, but those hurdles and the frustration that comes into that, was that something that made it difficult to communicate or get along or causing problems with your relationships?
Yeah, it definitely um, played a big role for a while in just relationship. But I mean, thankfully, my wife's just so awesome. She's always just been humongous support, as well as my parents. But she's taken more the role of caring for day to day, especially back then. Um, but I mean, she never complained about it. But I can't, I've helped care for other people and whatnot, not on the same level, but she did everything. I mean, helped change wounds and um, I had a colostomy bag for a while, so helping, change that thing and giving me shots and helping move me, transferring to one thing to another and all this stuff. And I mean, yeah, it definitely, it didn't necessarily put a strain on it as far as, her getting frustrated at me in any sort of way. It was more of just, I think, my internal frustration and anger and bitterness that I was holding on to at that time. Um, that's what kind of put a strain on our marriage,
Right.
honestly, for a while. And I just took all that frustration and anger out on her, and which is just horrible, but that's the reality of it. And it wasn't until I could um, really come to terms with what kind of a husband do I want to be, and having a moment with God and just realizing, Lord, I don't want to be this kind of a husband. I don't want to be this kind of father for our children. I want to be a loving and caring husband and father. And so that was kind of more the turning point, thankfully, that, Jesus just helped turn me around and started working in me in ways to where I could really be the husband and father that I needed to be.
That's good. And obviously, knowing you now, I mean, you've been able to do that, and the story that, the journey that you've gone through to get yourself where you are today, and then me being able to be a part of it in the way that I have been. And I didn't know you, in the recovery process, but sharing those things with me and the hurdles and the struggles and the depression and all the things that you're experiencing from the trauma, um, you know, for what you've been able to accomplish now and the lives that you've impacted. It definitely, for you talking about not wishing that, that thinking about things could have been different, and the way that they ended up being put you in this position to be able to do that. And, it's a, unless there's anything that you think that it's important through, you've talked about, obviously coming to terms with it, and then, asking God to help guide you on this path to be a better man, because this is not who you want to be. And, you're obviously at Walter Reed, right? And you start to build relationships with all these guys at Walter Reed. Um, you know, are some of those people that you met along the way, obviously they played an impact, some in a positive way and some in a detrimental way, that kind of motivated you to do what it is that you're doing now. Do you want to talk about that with us?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't actually spend a whole lot of time at Walter Reed. I was there for about 3 months, but the whole time there was just spent in a hospital room, so I didn't have a chance, unfortunately, to meet any other wounded warriors or anything like that at Walter Reed. But I requested to go down to San Diego
Oh, okay,
because
okay.
I wanted to be back. I wanted to be there so I could go and see my unit when they got back from deployment, and it was closer to my parents who were in Colorado. Um, but yeah, I have a really good friend of mine, Andrew, who's a triple amputee. He's an EOD tech with the Navy, and he was kind of one of the bigger impacts, I guess, as far as like wanting to to push myself. Um, so he was just, triple amputee, you know, much more severe injuries than I, and he's on both two prosthetic legs, prosthetic arm, coming over, big smile on his face, man, just starts talking to me, and I'm, sitting outside at in San Diego hospital there in my wheelchair, and just seeing this guy and how he is, and he's big buff dude still, and just starting to chat and whatnot, and he ended up being the guy that lived right across the street from me in San Diego there. And so we just built a great relationship together. He encouraged me to go to the gym with him, and so we started going and working with the same trainer at the same time every day. And then yeah, he would just be like, hey, you want to go and practice stairs on prosthetics today, or you want to learn how to walk off a curb with no cane, that kind of stuff. And so he would just push me to like, you know, be able to use my prosthetics to their full advantage. So that was, he's been an awesome friend of mine. And, what's even cooler, he just recently gave his life to Christ, and, it's been amazing to just see that transformation in him. But, kind of honestly, the biggest impact, on why I am doing the Guardian Project and with Whiteheart comes from terrible situation. So I was at this. This was probably 2013. Still living in San Diego. Was working with a friend of mine that I served with. Doing a business together. We want to do firearm training and things like that together. And so we go to Vegas at SHOT Show, and there's a Marine double amputee who was in the same Wounded Warrior Battalion that I was in. He was at the same show. He was repping specialized wheelchair at this show for an organization. And so we got talking, and I was like, hey, what are you up to? And, just talking to him about what he's doing. And I mean, he was just like this happy guy, a whole lot going for him. He had all these aspirations and dreams and things he was working towards. And, it was awesome. And then fast forward a couple of months, and I'm out at, in New Hampshire at the 6 Hour Academy doing some training. And one day after training, I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I see that this guy had committed suicide. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I literally just talked to this guy a couple of months ago, and he told me, he was doing this and this and this, and like just a smile on his face and so excited about what he was doing. And now he's killed himself. And I couldn't understand it. And this wasn't the first suicide I'd, been exposed to. I had a few other guys that were in my unit that committed suicide after getting out, and definitely horrible. But it was just that one, I guess, with the relational aspect of it that just kind of hit me harder. And I knew Ryan at this point. Whiteheart gave me a track chair. And so I knew who Ryan was, and the founder of Whiteheart, and I reached out to him. I was like, hey man, this just happened. And turns out he knew the same guy. He knew the whole story too. And I just was like, I got to do something. We need to do something to help mitigate veteran suicide, because this is ridiculous. And he was like, I agree. And I was like, well, how do I start a nonprofit? That was my initial thing. Like, how do I start a nonprofit? And he said, don't even do that. It's a horrible nightmare. But Whiteheart has been wanting to do something like this for a while, but we just need somebody to run it. And I said, without hesitation, I was like, I'll do it. I'm your guy. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, and it's an awesome thing because obviously I know Ryan personally, and to see like how genuine that he is about this mission that he's behind. And if you know Ryan, um,
Mm-hmm.
you know that he's not in it for, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, um, you know, that he's not in it for, uh, anything like he participates. He's there, vi visiting with these people, the veterans that come out and spends time with them, gets to know them on a personal level, participates, in the activities and, dedicates his time to being involved with this. And it's awesome to see and know from, the ground up. And like me being fortunate enough now that you've included me to be a part of this and, a little bit bigger of a role. And I, obviously will be forever grateful of that because the work that's done is, absolutely fantastic. I mean, you know that, I know that, and the people who've partaken in it know that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was like getting the Guardian Project going and what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, it took us about a year to do some research. So I mean, we didn't want to just do a trip or a program where okay, we go and take guys out fishing or hunting or whatever it might be, give them some fun, give them some free swag, and then send them home. Like that's it's fun. Don't get me wrong. Those organizations that do that, it's cool. It gives a nice outlet to go and have some recreational fun, but it does nothing for the mental and emotional health of a veteran, um, other than just having a quick moment of some fun. And it might help them there then in the moment, but when they go home and they're back in normal life, busy family and work and whatever, all the stresses of normal life, what are they can't go and fall back on, well, let's just go, hunting or fishing again, but we wanted to do a program that was going to target, how does someone's brain actually heal from trauma. And so, we did about a year research on, things that were, people did actual tests and studies on what it is that heals people's brains and helps them to be able to have a more normal functioning emotional response system and mental response to different stimulus and things like that. So we did all the research, put together a program, and we launched our first trip in 2016. And it was just kind of our pilot program, had a few guys that we knew, guys like Jordan Stevenson, Jose Martinez, and had my friend Mike Pavlik, who I served with, a number of other vets too that were just on that pilot program. It was a pretty small trip, went out to Wyoming, and the focus of it, obviously there's fun aspect. Don't get me wrong, fun's not wrong. We do the whitewater rafting, we do the rock climbing, we do cowboy action shooting, but most of these activities are centered around team building and working together, similar to the military. You've got to work together on the river, you got to work together on the rock, things like that. So that was a big aspect of it. And then sitting around a campfire at night, there's something therapeutic and something that actually goes on in the brain when you're sitting around an open fire. And especially when you can sit around one with like-minded individuals and be able to open up in a small group about issues that are going on in your life. And so when one person can start opening up and start spilling out, the ugly truth of what's going on in their life, like, deep in their soul, then that really helps other people to start being like, okay, he just shared, like, I can too. And then not only that, like, he just said some things, some issues that he's going through that I'm going through, and I thought I was alone in that. I felt I was the only one that dealt with this kind of issue, but
Right.
apparently not. And so, being able to have that opportunity is incredible. And then a big part of it too is just the follow up. So you're not just another number. We're not taking you on this week long trip. We send you home and then you never hear from us again. like we really try hard to follow up with veterans, invite them back on trips if they're needing it. Um, so that's kind of how it's all played out. And um, we started out with just one trip a year for a while, and now it's grown. This coming year, if funding and everything goes as we're hoping to do 6 to 8 trips.
Holy
So
cow. That, yeah, I mean, last year,
yeah,
what was it? Last year was four, right? Four
yeah,
trips.
four
So
trips. Yeah.
damn near going to be able to double that. That's fantastic, dude. I'm so happy to hear that. And like being somebody that's partaken in the in the experience of the Guardian Project, I can definitely attest to the fact that the campfire is the best part about that trip. Me personally, obviously, you know that I have a heck of a time on the river. There's picture and video to attest to that. Climbing the rock, and I mean, you know, seeing like Joe Lowry, Kyle Moser, guys that are um, when you guys rock climb, dude, and you guys get up the side of that rock face, or you get on the raft and you're ripping it down, class four rapids. There's something that it does, I think, um, to the other people that are there and seeing if they don't want to break outside of their comfort zone or they're struggling with some things, and then they see, damn, there's the G.I. Joe Lowry, paralyzed on half of his body from a gunshot wound to the head. He's doing this. There's Kyle Moser, a double amputee, stepped on a pressure plate. He's doing this. Jed Morgan, double amputee. He's doing this. Um, that motivation factor of like, and I'll be as brash as possible. Like, they're at that watching that right there will get the bitch out of your body. Like that will turn you to be like, I can do this. If they can do this, like what one of the ladies, Tutu was calling you Superman, when we were in Colorado and you climbed that. It looked like it was a little difficult with your prosthetics on. But you got up there, you and Jeremiah got up there and did that, and being able to witness, things like that, and the resilience behind going through a traumatic experience, like, you know, losing your legs to a pressure plate, IED. It's awesome. It's motivating, and then obviously the campfire stuff, the stuff that we're able to talk about and decompress with and lessen that load that a lot of people are carrying on their pack. And it's men and women from different branches, different times of service, whether it be Iraq or Afghanistan, and we're able to collectively come together. And again, talking about that, Baker 3-2 being that cohesive unit after doing range 400 or whatever. Well, White Hart, 2019 or 2020 or whatever trip that they're on, they became a cohesive unit when they overcame those obstacles on the water or on the side of that rock face. Um, so it's cool to see the way that you've been able to develop this program and be so hands-on. I mean, it's another one of your babies. You essentially have four kids, Um, but you have a beautiful life, Judd Morgan. You have a beautiful family, and you're surrounded by people that love you, and you emulate that. Like you are, project that onto other people. You and I keep in touch quite often. I know that you do that with other people that obviously you served with and people that you've been on the trips with. I mean, you're the poster child, in my opinion, of success after your time in service. Um, and it doesn't mean, and when I say that, it doesn't mean monetary value things. It doesn't mean money in your pocket or a gold chain around your neck. In the terms of a beautiful, healthy family, and you're impacting the veteran community in ways that people can only dream of. So, I think I'm grateful that you and I have been put together, that I've been fortunate enough that you've helped me put myself on track. And I mean, you remember I've been talking about wanting to do this for so long, and it's other veterans and people that, Kyle specifically, pushing me to put myself out there and do this. And I wouldn't have a lot of those relationships built if I hadn't gone through White Heart and been able to put myself out there and participate in other, go support my buddy that does his nonprofit thing in Chicago and get involved with other groups of people, and be willing to share my story in the ways that it helped me open up about my experiences when I was on that first trip. So, That's why I'll forever be grateful for Jed Morgan and the things that you do, not just for me, but for the veteran community as a whole. So, I think that's a good place to leave it on, unless you know what, no, I do have a question for you. Um, if you could go back and think about the experience of the GWAT as a whole, right? Um, the role that you played in it and, the 20 years that it's taken for it to culminate. If there's one word that you could describe it in, what would that word be?
Hmm. Man, one word. Um, mm, let's see. You talking about just the whole
Whatever the whole thing. I mean, or if
whole
you're
thing?
whatever it comes to mind when you think of the GWAT as a whole.
A mess. That's what I'd say. Just a mess.
That would be,
But
yeah. Do you obviously I think anybody can piece together why, but for somebody out there that would question why you would say, that would be your word of choice. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
just the whole reasoning on why we're there in the first place. Um, just the realities of what we're trying to do, or what we at least told the American public we were trying to do, and without trying to get into a whole lot of you know political kind of things, but yeah, just a lot of lives lost for no reason, and just being there in person. If I was just kind of on the outside, never having gone overseas there and seen the people that were, supposedly protecting and whatnot, um, it would be a different story. I wouldn't have the ability to really say what I'm saying, but um, yeah, just seeing how we were more of a hindrance to the local population than we were a help, and seeing how much money and lives that were lost for nothing
Right.
ultimately. That's why I was just I believe it's just a mess from the beginning. Never should have been over there in the first place, and yeah, it's just sad the amount of people that have died and bled over there, um, just for horrible political reasons.
Yeah.
But
It's unfortunate, but I guess not to end on a note that is a little I don't want to say depressing, but unfortunate. The whole conundrum, the whole situation in general. But if you had a word of advice to give to somebody out there, whether they've been out of the military for 10 years or 10 days, and they're struggling with moving forward or pressing forward in that next journey in life, what would a word of advice be from Jed Morgan on something to do to change your pace up?
yeah, I think whether you agree with what you did overseas or whether you don't, more like myself. I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, can't change the past. I can't change what happened, nor would I want to. Even though I don't agree with why we were there, um, I wouldn't change it, because I know, not just believe, but I know that God had me there for a specific reason, and has used what has happened in amazing ways that I never could have fathomed. So I know God used exactly what happened for a specific purpose, and He's still using it. And just know that whatever situations you may have been through, whether it's combat related trauma, whether it's military sexual trauma, whatever the case may be, as terrible or as hard as it might be to hear, like, God's got a reason for the pain. There's always a reason for the pain that we go through, and we've got to be able to just be willing to either let that pain destroy us and push us down, or we can allow that pain to be a moment of growth, and we get that choice. Nobody else can make that for us. We get to make that ourselves as individuals. So I would just encourage you to really dig down deep. Are you going to let the enemy win by letting that pain destroy you and keep you pressed down? Because that's exactly what the enemy wants. Um, or are you going to rise above that? Remember the training that the military gave you of resiliency and keep pressing forward, or and rise above it, and do something magnificent with that pain and let yourself grow from it, because there's lessons to be learned, and you still have something to offer. You're still here, you're still breathing, your heart's still beating, you still have something to offer this world, and you can do amazing things with it, whether you think you can or not. So that's my big encouragement.
Heck yeah, dude, turning that pain into purpose, that's
Mm.
one thing that I'll you implemented onto me, and um I'm hoping that I can make my impact the same way that you have. And if I could, follow in your path and live up to be half the man that you are, I think that would be pretty solid on my behalf. So um Jed Morgan, I love you, dude, and I'm so thankful that you came on and chatted with me and you're able to share your story. Like I said, I know you've done this before, but maybe this reaches somebody that needs to hear the words that you've got to say. And you're a great guy, and I can't wait to see you this summer. And couldn't come fast enough, dude.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it so much, and just thanks for your kind words and encouragement and whatnot. There, I really appreciate what you had to say, and appreciate you having me on this podcast. Because yeah, I think it's a amazing opportunity, to be able to reach people, and if people didn't hear anything else, I just hope that they heard that you know Christ Christ wants you, and um, he's got a plan for your life, and um, if people are interested in talking about it, they can reach out to me anytime. Jed at whiteheart.org. Simple way you can send me an email, and I'd love to talk to people about whatever they're whatever's going on in their life.
Yeah, and also make sure that you guys go over to the whiteheart.org website. Is that what it is? It's .org, right?
Yep.
Whiteheart.org. Check out what awesome things the White Heart Foundation is doing out there, and get you an application filled out for the Guardian Project. It's a great time, great way to connect, and you bring home some tools, um, with things that help this transition into civilian life, no matter how long you've been out for, because we can always keep learning, constantly the student of mental health and growth, that post-traumatic growth. So Jed Morgan, United States Marine, awesome dude, father, follower in Christ, and the guy that gets the Guardian Project doing its thing and changing lives for the good. I appreciate your time, dude. And again, I can't wait to see you.
Same, Mike. Thank you.
No problem. That was Jed Morgan, United States Marine, on the Pressing Forward podcast.